Yeah, so if you guys have comments about the trailer, let's put up front because he's going to add that in post up front, and then we'll start with laughing at it. We just watched
Three,
it.
two, one.
We'll recreate that conversation.
Stardate 41153.7. 78 years have passed since the days when the original crew of the USS Enterprise explored the unknown wonders of the universe. Now, a spectacular new Galaxy starship, 8 times larger and light years ahead in technology, has been designed. Its mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and civilizations, to boldly go where none have gone before. The all-new adventures of Star Trek, The Next Generation, with an all-new crew specifically selected to serve on board the most technologically advanced starship ever built. Their primary function: to gain further understanding of the universe and their place in it. In command is Jean-Luc Picard, Starfleet captain and one of the Federation's most distinguished leaders.
Stand by.
Ready for departure, sir.
Engage. We have a long voyage ahead of us.
Commander William Riker. He's executive in charge of away missions and second in command.
I have no problem with following any rules you lay down, short of compromising your safety.
One further thing.
Anything, sir.
I'm not a family man, Riker, and yet Starfleet has given me a ship with children aboard. But since a captain needs an image of geniality, you're to see that's what I project.
Aye, sir.
Welcome to the Enterprise, Commander Riker.
Joining them on the crew is Lieutenant Commander Data, an android with amazing memory and strength. Counselor Deanna Troi, a half-human, half-betazoid with incredible psychic powers.
I'm sensing a powerful mind.
Lieutenant Geordi LaForge, blinded since birth, wears a unique visual device to see beyond ordinary humans.
How are you examining them, Geordi?
In every way, microscopically, thermally, electromagnetically.
Tasha Yar, security chief and refugee from a renegade planet, fighting for justice. The former enemy of the Federation, Klingon Lieutenant Worf, now serves aboard the Enterprise. Chief Medical Officer Beverly Crusher. It was Picard who ordered her husband on his ill-fated mission. She is joined by her brilliant son, Wesley. Now, the classic legend that changed the face of television forever lives on in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
We just watched
Three,
it.
two, one.
We'll recreate that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, why weren't we recording that?
Okay, welcome everyone to the Star Trek, our new series exploring all the wonderful episodes in Star Trek. And we're continuing with our series of pilots, going from The Cage, which we did last time, to Encounter at Farpoint, which you saw the wonderfully edited, hilarious trailer at the start. The guys, what do you think of the this is your first foray into Star Trek: The Next Generation. You see that trailer.
So it starts out with the guy reading the stardate, 41153. And I'm reminded of that bit in King of Queens where he's like, how about a little phone number rhythm? A little bum, 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 bum. It's like 41153 point. He's like, no, 41153, 1719.
I'll never forget that phone number as long as I live. Sorry.
I was just saying, like, you have to think back in the 80s, right? They're showing this trailer to local television stations around the country because this was a syndicated show. It wasn't a network show. So they're just trying to sell this to local regional television stations. And they're up against reruns of Three's Company and MASH and, what's happening now. So this trailer would really pop, I think, for a regional buyer. And I'm just glad they didn't refer to any of the women as the beautiful exotic Deanna Troi.
One step away.
They were getting close with Troy. They were so close.
The beautiful exotic Commander Worf.
That's how I would
enemy.
refer to him. But no. That's what I love the most about that entire thing is that Worf singular is the enemy of the Federation, or he was.
Federation. Yeah.
That's a very different vision for Worf. I want to see that version.
Not with detachable foreheads.
Yes. Well, yeah. So we've just come off watching the episode, and if you're a subscriber on Twitch, you can see the episode in our Discord. Sorry, got to do the plug. Have to every time. If you're not already a member of that, go join. We're a lot of fun. But yes, we've just finished watching Encounter and Farpoint, and so would you like some fun facts to start us off? So originally, I mean, everyone knows the story. Originally, Phase 2 was supposed to happen after Star Trek, when it got picked back up for reruns, and they thought, oh, hello, this is popular. Let's do Phase 2. But it got turned down for the films, and it wasn't until 1986 that Roddenberry turned around and says, nah, I don't want to do this, and I think it was NBC or Paramount went up to him and said, like, yeah, let's do Star Trek again. He went, nah, and then they came up with a few early concepts, which kind of went. He kind of did the Toriyama with Dragon Ball, who kind of went after Dragon Ball Evolution. He kind of looked at it and went, oh, this is so bad, I need to get involved. Like, these concepts you produced. No. Okay, We'll go and make Star Trek. Okay. Bonus question. Bonus points here for anyone. What century was this originally going to be planned, and what was the name? What was the registration of the Enterprise at that time?
Oh, of course, we all have that memorized.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, but you go first, Otto, since you're speaking for us all.
Well, having experienced with this on my match luggage, I will guess Enterprise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No.
Only an idiot would have that as his passcode.
Originally, this was planned to be set in the 25th century, and it was going to the Enterprise 1701G. But they considered with the technology they had,
the
too
OG.
far.
G for gangsta, yes.
So,
they fire their phasers sideways.
A few other little fun
facts. Was it too much of a Buck Rogers thing? Is that why they were trying to
25th century? Yeah, it does have that kind of ring to it, doesn't it?
Jean-Luc Picard in the 25th century. No,
in the year 2525, if Picard is still alive.
So I've got some other ones. So I've got some alternate names.
Well, I was going to say, there's important. 1986 is an important year for Trek. That's the year The Voyage Home came out and did gangbusters at the cinema, no?
Absolutely. Yes, it was. And that's when...
So that'd be part of the reason why this got springboarded.
Absolutely. I mean, the films have been doing actually really good for numbers. Star Trek was the cultural phenomenon at the time. And I think in 1986 they turned around and said, we're going to do a series. Later that year they announced it and then very quickly filmed it. I think it was from early 1987.
All the hallmarks of care.
There are some aspects of this that were maybe suffered from a little bit of Roddenberry being Roddenberry, because originally the plot was written by DC Fontana, very famous Trek writer. DC Fontana, been writing for them for Trek for years. Wrote out. No one could tell her how long the script should be, because Roddenberry wanted to do an hour. The network wanted to do 2 hours. They settled on 90 minutes, and then they went back up to 2 hours. So she just went, here's a script, that's what I've written, pay me please, and Roddenberry had to write the rest, when it turned out it was going to be 2 hours.
So what really happened is she wrote 90 minutes of script. He marked out about 30 minutes of saucer separation, and then he got half the writer's credit on that episode for the rest of his life. So.
Somewhere in the world, Alexander Courage is nodding wistfully. Man. Yeah, this has all the hallmarks of, this is written by two different writers, and neither of them are quite sure what this episode is quite meant to be about.
Okay.
So it's about everything.
A few other little pre-production stuff before we go into the episode, because we're starting a whole new series here. There's a few things. Original names for crew. He was originally going to be Julian Picard. Riker was going to be Riker was going to be Riker with a Y, but he wasn't going to be he wasn't going to be assigned there first. There was going to be a previous first officer called Kyle Summers, who would then transfer over to the USS Starseeker. Yar was originally called Masha Hernandez.
Yeah, she was going to be a Vasquez type. I remember that.
Yeah,
Hold on, I have jokes for all of these names. Stop going so fast.
Go for Julian Picard. Go on. What's your one with that?
No. No. The moment has passed.
Well, no. Here's your time to shine, Otto, because you know this one. What was Wesley's original name?
Crusher's daughter, Leslie Crusher. Yeah. So they nailed that one at least. They stuck with that one, but the rest of them got substantially changed.
They should have left his name Leslie.
Yeah, would have worked either way.
But then it wouldn't have been
Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is then it wouldn't have been an exact match for Roddenberry's middle name.
So
Shut up, Leslie. Like, it still would have worked.
It's still not fucked.
Yeah, still got the same cadence. Yeah.
So the original script by DC Fontana reads as such: an alien vessel appears near the planet and sent a message that all personnel had to beam to the planet or all would die. The captain of the Starseeker was preparing to have his ship fire photon torpedoes, but before he could do, the Starseeker was destroyed. At Picard's orders, the Enterprise D beamed to the surface and made contact with their enemy, the Anoi, an ape-like species with high technology. The Anois enslaved both the crew and inhabitants of Farpoint and forced them to mine the mineral Balmine. An away team including Data, Riker with a Y, Troy, and Hernandez got aboard the Anoi ship. Yeah, and with the help of Leslie Crusher's knowledge about the vessel's layout, Troy then learned there was no engineering room aboard the ship. The ship was actually a life form. This life form had been enslaved by an Anoi and needed Balmine to survive. So that was the original treatment.
It took a 15-year-old child prodigy to realize, hey, the ship doesn't have an engine room. Something's sus.
Pretty much, yeah.
What the fuck?
Instead,
that's most of the plots of season 1, though. So
yeah, there's a lot.
Okay,
of crossover there.
It does combine like 5 different episode plots in that one.
Yeah.
Treatment.
So here's the thing, right? Is that we give Roddenberry a lot of short shift for how TNG season 1 turned out, and to a degree, I think he is mostly responsible. But here's the thing: Dorothy Fontana, God bless her, had missed. I think she'd lost a step since the early '60s, since she had been writing for TOS, because that is just a TOS episode with reheated mashed potatoes on the side. That is not what you needed for your bold step in the future.
Once you reach the heights of Way to Eden, it's hard to come down gracefully.
Did you write that? Was that
from
DC Fontana
that
script?
pedestal? Yeah, it was.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Okay.
I was a little surprised that she'd only had, I think, 17 episode writing credits. I kind of thought it would be more, but
only.
Well, I mean,
17 is a quarter of the series.
I mean, okay, so if a non-complete Trek nerd was to name Star Trek writers, she'd be one of the 2 that people could name. So
probably that and Harlan Ellison, probably.
Oh yes, I know Harlan, of course.
Yes, of course. Thank you for the appropriate pause there to let it sink in for our audience that we all totally know who that was.
Yes. City on the Edge of Forever.
Thank you. So yeah, okay. Opinions, guys. We've just finished watching this, and bearing in mind, obviously everyone's more familiar with TNG and the later incarnations, and this is sort of the brand new pilot, the spin-off. Do you think this was a good pilot to be representative of the overall series we watch?
So it's a little different because they had already kind of committed to a season. This was not like we're trying to sell everyone on this that you want to buy our thing. It was just kind of the introduction to everyone. So it was a little bit different than something that is specifically aimed at appealing to network execs, I think.
Yeah, I suppose we have to keep that in mind. Yeah, because I'm thinking about how this sits in the grander structure of TNG, and almost nothing that gets brought up here is retained apart from the Q storyline, which I believe Otto or Idle, you were telling me most of the writers were saying this is a bad idea, this shouldn't be in the script. And then it proceeds to be the only through line through the 7 years from Farpoint to here is the Q storyline, because nothing else that gets introduced here is really followed up on. None of the post-atomic horror stuff really comes back in any way, shape, or form, apart from the iconography. It doesn't even make an appearance in First Contact. Yar gets none of there's no backstory for almost any character here apart from Riker and Troy, and that's very different because they have telepathic contact in this episode, which they never really show off again.
Wesley gets his
but even
he brought
then,
my dad's body home moment, didn't he? So
yeah. This is a little bit of a downer, really.
It was a bit.
I don't know if that's true. I think this episode does actually set up a lot of character points that are carried on throughout the series. Like Wesley's precociousness is set up. Data's desire to be more human is set up. The Riker Troy romance is set up. Picard just backhanding his security officer. Every suggestion is set up multiple times.
Quiet, you!
Do you want to shoot a hole through the view screen? It's all there. And Picard's characterization is pretty much where it ends up. Like everyone else is kind of finding their way. Picard's Patrick Stewart's in a Merchant Ivory BBC production at this point, and everyone else is in a TV movie of the week. Is in a movie of the week production. Delancey's kind of he's pretty much on point.
He's
with
loving
his
every minute of that.
Everyone else is just So,
all right, hold on. I want to take an impromptu poll because I think Idle and I may have been not agreeing with this before.
So disagree.
Would Q have worked? Keeping in mind what we just saw from the Q story in this pilot, would Q have worked? Could Q have worked as well or better without Delancey?
Better, I don't know. I think it would have worked I think it would maybe a little bit worse or as fine with any other actor because, not any other actor.
Yeah, not any other. Because so we did have Trelane.
You need a certain personality type.
Bill Campbell, and you can't tell me that wasn't a great.
I think
it was good enough for Delancey to pull from that to create Q and expand on it. So
I think if
there's got to be a handful of other guys out there, right?
Q as in Delancey's Q. If they were to recast him, I wouldn't feel like anyone could bring the energy. AQ, anyone could play AQ. I mean, that's what essentially Trelane is, having that mannerisms of mischievousness. But I think Delancey's Q is something timeless that he brings to that character that no one else really can.
Well, you can't say could anyone else do Delancey's Q. I'm talking about the Q that they write for the episode.
Let's look at the other Qs that they brought in. Like Quinn Q is pretty good. He's pretty great. Corbin Burnson is kind of meh as Q.
Well, he's only got 2 minutes to establish himself, so yeah.
Hey, Delancey only had a couple minutes in the front to establish himself. He comes in throwing heat.
Okay.
Susie Plaxton's Q is pretty good.
Susie Plaxton's Q is pretty great.
I see where you're coming from here, Otto. It's like if John Delancey was not on the scene, they played anyone to play this role as in the pilot. What about if they'd cast Eddie Murphy with that kind of same energy?
No.
I'm just trying to think of 80s actors that kind of could match that energy.
How about Chris Farley as Q? Would that?
Well, no. Let me make a counterpoint, right? So. The character archetype that Q fits in is of the trickster god, the Loki or various other, it turns up in every kind of mythology, right? And in British science fiction, there is a very easy analog to that, which is the Doctor from Doctor Who. And you can probably get any of the actors who have played the various different incarnations of the Doctor to bring some of that enigmatic, mysterious, trickstery, but still personable personality. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can easily see Sylvester McCoy or even Paul McGann later on, like Christopher Eccleston, could bring the same intensity and personal interplay to this character. It's not John Delancey is an incredibly talented actor, but he is not the only character who could have played a Q. Like other people played a Q, and it's like the reason he's very iconic. But you could replicate at least some of the same aspects that came here. You'd probably get different personality traits come out as he came back throughout the series, and he might have had better. Chemistry with different actors, because you can see almost from the instant that they're in the same room with one another, John Delancey and Patrick Stewart basically just hone in on each other as you say, the two actors who really understand what they're here to do and are understanding their roles, and they just bounce right off each other and they really create a spark. And if that had been a different actor, maybe they would have gravitated more towards Jonathan Frakes, which is what they tried in the next Q appearance. Or maybe it would have been a weird thing where it's like, look, they have really good chemistry with Denise Crosby, and we'll go with that angle. But there's something about these two personality types and that chemistry that really does work, and you can see why they decide to hone in on that, especially from the Q appearances going forward. It's that personality type just interlocks really well.
Moving on slightly, the start of the whole episode, it sort of kicks off, and we have this whole almost 20-minute section of just kind of the A plot, or this, the Roddenberry right. Like, it's very unusual if you're looking at, say, modern or even TV, even old Star Trek scripts from like the 60s and the films, to have dedicated to one section without swapping to the B plot or building up the drama in other ways. But no, it is solid. Q and Picard courtroom scene for an intro to the pilot of your show without kind of trying to build up whatever you're sitting there kind of going, well, hang on, there are other actors in this. Like, where's Riker? Where's Geordi? Where's
allegedly?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very weird to have that much dominance to one storyline very early on in the episode.
I actually thought it was fine because for me it starts to drag more in the second half. But that pacing, a
I agree.
half an hour pacing in the beginning, okay, we're going along with the storyline, but then bam, we go down to the planet and we get introduced to Riker and LaForge and Crusher, and then that picks it back up because you're getting like a whole set of fresh faces there. So
It's almost
I
like
think
it's
that
a
was
second
because
episode.
they had to go
Yeah.
2 hours anyway.
Yeah.
So you got to do something to break it up. It's not like they did a whole hour of courtroom and then an hour of the rest. They kind of did it in half-hour chunks almost.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you need time to absorb the new characters and the ship designs and the sets and the uniforms. Like, so it's okay that you're lingering on this A story because this is new. You haven't seen this before. This is this.
I just found it a bit jarring
in.
when we sort of got locked into this courtroom drama, essentially, and this sort of existential, sort of like superior being testing our morality, and then you all of a sudden, like, you get really locked into it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're in an episode of Star Trek. What are the other characters doing? Like, it's having that amount of time to be focused on one thing to then suddenly kind of go, and now over to Farpoint Station, where here's Riker trying to not chat up Beverly Crusher.
And failing.
Part of it was, he struck out bad. Even Wesley was like, "This is awkward." She doesn't mean to come across as cold and unfeeling, but that's my mom.
Do you have to give
around men? Make sure that you include that line.
Yeah. Around women, she's fine. Strong feminine needs.
Oh, we're back to the cage.
Oh, there's the link
drives.
to episode 1. Unusually strong feminine drives.
Right. I think part of the reason this structure does, for the most part, work is that, from what I recall, they wanted to structure the series going forward as Picard would not go on away missions, and Riker would. They even put that in the trailer. That's the structure they're going to go with. And so Picard would handle everything on the ship. He would be dealing with diplomacy and all that kind of stuff. And then Riker would be the action guy doing all that kind of stuff. And as an introduction to the characters in those roles, this does function well for that, because you get a lot of Picard dealing with an extra-dimensional being and, dealing with diplomatic bullshit and legalese, which, guess what? He goes on to do a lot of that throughout the series. And then you cut to Riker doing the stuff on the planet, investigating, chatting up women and failing. Again, you see a lot of that throughout the series. So while the structure is a bit jarring because you're so used to, all right, 5 minutes of A plot, now it's just B plot, having it in these big chunks is a bit odd in terms of the pacing, but it does work all right as a character introduction because you get an idea of what these characters' roles are, and you're not. You look at Worf and you look at Geordi and you're like, what are your roles here? But everyone else is fairly well defined in what they do and what their personality is meant to be like at this point in the series. So you can go forward with that. Like, Worf and Geordi are very much kind of blank slates who are defined by, he's a Klingon, he's blind. And that's all you really get. You don't even get an official position for them. But that gets filled in later.
Yeah, we don't even get to find out how bad with women Geordi is, which is pivotal to his character moving forward.
So what you're saying is we should, like, right before he comes up to Riker and he gets the Stonewall treatment, he should have been trying to chat about like a bandy native and getting turned down because he's like, sorry, I can tell you're the holographic woman, I'm not like that.
So that whole Klingon sex scene later where Worf is like, this is sex, but I have no need for it in my life. Now, that originally went to LaForge, and then they had to like switch it later to a different character.
All right.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so speaking of characters, who would you say was your... I don't want to say favourite character of the episode, because we're sort of quite young and we're very prejudiced to our favourite characters, but what would you say was your most defining character of the episode? Who do you think got the best treatment here? Or who do you think got the most work?
All right. I'm not going to be a basic bitch, and I'm not going to take the easy answer because I know that one of you is going to pick Picard because it's the easiest answer. Guess what? He gets the best treatment in this. I will actually say Crusher. She has like a bit of a rough introduction in the mall sequence where it's like, oh, I'm going to ignore my commanding officer and all the weird mysteries around me, despite the fact that I'm a Starfleet officer and I should be interested in this shit. All I'm interested in is this fabric that I could replicate on my ship.
It's got a gold pen on it now. I'm going to make so many cushions.
But the scene that she has with Leslie, talking about the bridge and filling in the backstory, the interplay with Picard on the bridge, and then the second scene in her office where she's establishing no, I am not I can absolutely separate my personal life from my professional life. I requested this. If you want to try and treat me differently, I'm going to take offense at that because I am a professional woman who is going to take this in my direction and it has nothing to do with you. With all due respect, fuck off. And I think that she acquits herself relatively well. Considering the fact that it's like, again, very early days. It's not a very well-defined character, but I don't know. I just like Gates McFadden as a performer quite a lot, even though I think she's not quite to everyone's taste. I just think she just has that charisma, and her chemistry with Patrick Stewart is kind of immediate. Like they immediately are just bouncing off each other. It's again John Delancey and Patrick Stewart. The pairs start forming almost immediately of who works best together and who doesn't.
Yeah, she's doing a lot of great, quiet, nuanced work in those scenes. Very true. Like I would, if we were ranking the actors in this episode, she's in the top 3 for me with Stewart and Delancey. But for me to answer that question, I think Patrick Stewart clearly is, running away with this episode. I mean, he gets every beauty shot. As you're watching, Otto couldn't stop remarking on his
that bone structure.
Yeah,
he was made for the theater.
Yeah, he looks great on camera. It just the camera loves him. They're lighting the hell out of him. And aside from one scene in the future courtroom when the cameraman must have been high or
over the lens.
Oh yeah, like it's left a smudge on the lens. He's lit brilliantly the entire time.
And what you don't realize is that the cameraman had his soul stolen by Shang Tsung, who was standing in the court.
That's right.
They didn't realize for a few minutes.
An actual actor of Shang Tsung in Mortal
famed
Kombat.
Asian actor, Kerry Tagawa from Mortal Kombat fame. He's in everything, and he's in that scene. So I love that.
Yeah, he wasn't in it for too long because he had to go and run along and film License to Kill like 2 minutes later. But
right, exactly. But yes, Stewart knows his character. I mean, he always talked about how he played all these generals and kings in Shakespeare plays, and so that's why he fell into this role very easily. But you can see it. He knows what he's doing. He's doing like
he treats it more
British
like
naval
royalty this early on, doesn't he? He feels more like he is a king, like he is a Shakespearean king, as opposed to the more sympathetic.
He's a bit more imperious than he is usually. Like he's a bit more shouty.
Yeah, he's very ship's captain, British ship's captain. Like
now hear this.
Yeah.
Maximum you're entitled to know. Yeah.
Man, that entitled to know one.
The way you worded this was best or most to do. So given the most to do was very clearly Marina Sirtis, because she shouldn't have been given 1/10 that much to do, but they did. And that was it was a huge part of the big pull down in pacing in the second half. They're wandering through hallways. She's feeling things. This is like a season 4 try to get her an Emmy kind of writing, because she was going for it. It was, and you can't do that in a pilot. It's totally unearned. We don't know anything about her, she's crying left and right, and
it diminishes the character. Yeah.
The kicker is she's also behind the curve at every point. Like we're 90 minutes in, and she still hasn't figured out that she's feeling like alien entities on the ship that they're on. And then even Riker figures it out ahead. He's like, all right, prepare the energy beam for that other alien. And then 3 minutes later, she's like, what if there's 2 aliens? I'm like, oh my God. What do you... Deanna, stay with the program. So
Marina Sirtis hated this. Like, she walked out of the premiere, like, she hates her
acting. Stars, share your theory about this character.
Well, the writing is just so abominable for her. Like, where it largely succeeds for Crusher in like establishing her as a strong personality in her own right, in her sphere as like commander of the medical officers. It's like Troy's role is incredibly ill-defined. She is just the counselor, and what she does on the bridge is incredibly like what is she doing on the battle bridge? Like, actually tell me what she's doing. Is she monitoring the mental health? Like, she should have stayed on the source of separation, and you should have brought Worf with you. No? Would that not make more sense? But no, they decided to bring Marina Sirtis into a role and a scene that she has no real place in being, and then just leave her high and dry, playing a character that she's like only 2 steps away from being like a TOS hysterical woman of the week. It's really not good.
Why?
The
It's
one
not like
scene.
it's not like
I
there's
thought,
hundreds of families and children on this sausage section that might need
A
the
counselor.
help of a
Yeah.
Well,
counselor.
it's not a traumatic time. They saucer sep every other week, so
Right.
yeah.
Source of Sep, yeah.
Yeah,
he
like
said
the
that,
one
didn't he?
scene. Oh yeah, sort of step. The one scene where she gets anything to do and is actually important to the episode is when she cottons on to the fact that when the jellyfish alien steals Groppler, the Mr. Gropplist, she realizes, hey, great satisfaction, and that's the one breakthrough moment. Like, I GM Star Trek Adventures, and so does Idle, and it's when, like, watching players trying to figure out a puzzle, and you keep on dropping things, and then someone goes, "What if I tried to read the intentions of the enemy?" And then it's the one time it's useful. And it's like her acting is not amazing, but neither is Jonathan Frakes really, and neither is Brent Spiner's okay. There's a lot of creepy smiles going around in this pilot,
Ooh,
but I feel like
yeah.
it's mostly the writing that lets Marina Sirtis down here because there's just nothing to do.
all right, Idle, who's your MVP or LVP in this
I'm
case?
going to go for I wouldn't say most defining. I want to kind of give it to Riker a little bit because he comes a bit fish out of water,
Yeah.
wants to kind of prove himself, and for the entire element, he just seems out of his element a lot of the time. He wanders into the holodeck and just kind of go, "Whoa, what is this futuristic technology?" It's almost as if he's been written to be the layman, kind of having to be explained. But the problem is he lives in the 24th century and has served as a first officer aboard many other starships. So none of this should be new to him.
No, you don't understand, Idle. He came from Alaska. It's a backwards out there. They don't understand technology.
All those years of
He
ambush
transferred last
wasted.
week.
I thought your grandfather was Canadian, sir.
Oh no!
But yeah,
Oh, so
God damn it, Lavelle.
Well, I like Stars' theory based on the writing that Troy was just pretending to have empathic powers the entire time. The way it's written.
So
Spotting
I
that track
I
record.
agree with you, Shai. They did set up a lot of points that they followed through with at a time. But the biggest disparate change was Riker is so desperate and needy for any kind of affirmation this episode. And, cut to a few years later, he's like, "You couldn't pay me to leave the Enterprise. I don't want a captaincy. I don't want admiralcy. I just want to stay here and be second in command." And so
I'm
that
comfortable
that was
with
a
But
big
they
deviation.
addressed
Not
that in
wife.
that episode, right? He's like, "What happened to me?"
Yeah,
In that
I used to be
episode.
full of
Great.
drive and ambition, right?
Yeah.
He does
Yeah, you
want
used to be a SWAT Riker. You used to be an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what it is? That moment when Q summons those two fantasy
I don't
women
need your
for him, and he's like,
fantasy
"I need-"
women.
Now, if it were season 1 Riker and he summoned a fantasy version of Picard, patting him on the head and telling him he's a good boy, he would have cried in a corner "Oh, Daddy noticed." It's so weird, this characterization for Riker.
Did anyone get a count of how many reaction shots we got from characters this episode?
All
it
of them.
did seem to be every
And they
time
were
something
all
happened,
from
So many.
they were all from their waist pointed upwards
yeah,
too.
it's every moment was
Yeah.
just there must have been a solid 10 minutes of just reaction shots in that episode.
Oh, more than that. People give shit to Discovery for Ensign reaction shot with Detner and
Oh, it's far
Oshkin.
worse.
They have not seen this pilot. This is so much worse. It's you're not even reacting to anything all that interesting. You're watching a saucer detach from the ship. You probably read the manual on how to do this. You operate this ship. Why are you surprised?
Can I go over?
Yeah,
one
and
of my
they took hours with these reaction shots.
Well,
Because
to
every
be
single
fair,
person has a point light on their eyes.
Yeah.
So you see the little glisten of light in their eyes as they're looking at it and wonder at whatever it is they're looking at.
so as we said, they did have to stretch this. They were handed
Yeah.
90 minutes of script. They're like, "All right, we need to add 30 minutes," and that's kind of an easy way to do it, even if it doesn't really get the desired effect.
Clearly, they should have just filled it in with 30 minutes of Jean-Luc Picard and Q having a mud wrestling fight. Clearly that's what should have happened in that cult room.
Can I bring up one of my favourite points? I can't remember who made it in the in our watch along. Which, if you want to watch our watch along, please go to subscribe to our Twitch channel and go to our Discord. Anyway, one of my favourite things to note is when they're doing, Riker saying, "Riker, you go do the manual manual unseparation, manual
Docking.
manual docking. Unseparation.
Yeah.
Sorry, words fail me. He's sitting there going,
Unseparation.
quarter to the port, hard left here, and like at the whole time O'Brien's sitting there kind of just doing it without really, because he's the real pilot there, isn't he? Like Riker's saying all these instructions behind him trying to impress Picard, and O'Brien's just sitting there rolling his eyes going, yeah.
Which
okay.
that is a very realistic look into middle management, because the guy who knows what to do doesn't need his boss to tell him how to do it. He's just going to do it. So
Yeah.
It's the most important man in Starfleet history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's him being
Pointed
wasted doing manual soul separations. As a
did that
British
once,
made
and then
history amazing.
They just steal that moment from Wrath of Khan, as I mentioned.
That's actually quite true.
Like making him do it on manual.
There's a lot of
Like the fact is, like you could have, if you fucked that up doing it on manual, does that not damage the ship? Does that not put children at risk? Like, why are you doing this to your first officer? You picked him.
Okay, how about the overall lesson? Like the main point in the episode being, there's a combination of humanity's trial to prove they are, not a barbaric race of people, and also the other side of it of a sort of simple race taking over an alien creature and it secretly being, an entire, whilst it's a city, having reunited with its long lost brethren. How did we feel sort of like the overall concept of the episode?
that's a good point. How come Q isn't torturing the Bandy for being utter barbarian savages? Because they're the one enslaving the aliens. Like,
pause. It's fine.
Because the Bandy have a low ceiling on their evolution. The little human-centric thing is that we're going to progress.
That's true.
So far that the Q are concerned with us.
Yeah. I think that as a moral lesson and a way to establish what Starfleet is meant to be like, as a peacekeeping armada and exploration force, this is a decent way of trying to accomplish that by making your very first mission, do not fire on the obvious enemy, go for diplomacy, use science to communication, and protect the downtrodden, don't elevate those who would inflict harm for their own personal gain. These are all the core tenets of Starfleet, and they come across okay. It's just a bit odd that it's like, in universe, it makes no sense. Like, surely, they are a little bit gun-happy to, lock phasers on the approaching jellyfish, which isn't a jellyfish, it's a weird...
it's a jellyfish.
Day the Earth is still... It's a flying saucer initially, which is a weird thing you don't see in Trek very often. They usually steer clear of that for intentional reasons. But and it's like lock phases is like, what? Oh, you're gonna attack him. It's like that's a standard thing we do, and it's like, no, it's not. You don't lock phases on anyone that comes into range. That's a weird thing you're doing.
Was there a red or yellow alert at any point?
Yeah, they shut off that damn noise.
Yeah, restart. I'm sorry, I'm breaking up here.
Oh,
well, it was hilarious. So
I think you're back here. You're back. Oh no, we're losing shot.
Oh, you're front. All right, but I actually didn't really like that because it's like Q didn't even give them a chance to prove they're not a barbarian. Like as soon as he said lock phasers, bam, there's Delancey going, "Oh, why are you locking phasers? You're savages after all." It's like, hold on, bro. Just observe for a while. Let me be in command and do my thing, and then you can see if our actions prove anything. And it's like he didn't really give him room to breathe. Sometimes he was like. It's that meme where Picard's in the shuttlecraft and Delancey's right over his ear breathing on him. There's a little bit of that in this episode.
It's a structural problem that gets fixed with later context, because in this first episode, you're like, why are you acting like this? This is a weird way. And then they retroactively justify it with, oh, he wanted them to succeed. He's always been steering the trial and giving them little hints and help there. But on its own, it makes no fucking sense, and it's really overbearing.
Okay.
Welcome back, Shy, by the way.
Welcome back, Shy.
Oh, am I back?
You are back. Yes,
you are back. You were sitting there looking pretty, which, that's one of your skills, but we want your oratorical discussion as well.
Thank you.
What would you change? Like, if you were to go back and someone was to hand you the script and say you're allowed to change one thing in this, or you're allowed to sort of change one particular thing. I know, I love to jump these on you.
Just one.
Just one thing. What would you change? What was the one thing, give it to appreciate later context for Star Trek Next Generation sort of episode?
All right, but I'm going third this time. I'm not answering first.
All right, Stars, go on.
Troy. It's
Troy.
Troy.
Okay, Troy, okay, yeah.
No, Shy wants to go first. There you go.
Go on.
Just while I have a moment of broadband clarity right now. Yeah, definitely Troy. Like, give her more nuance, less weepiness, and less, emoting. Even though she's the empath, it's just constant. And like just a moment of lightness between her and Riker to show why they were in love. Rather than just sort of like gazing at each other. Angstily.
Yeah, in fact, you know what?
I mean, if they were,
I feel like Troy suffers from that problem of, writing intelligent characters in a script is hard because it requires you to be intelligent, and writing characters who are emotionally intelligent and who should be able to psychologically profile another character and tell you about their intentions is hard without giving the game away. And so Troy is stuck in this moment of, well, I could tell you something really important, but the script dictates that I don't tell you that until Act 3 after you've already worked out because of the rest of the plot structure. So they've hamstrung her that way. And it required just a slightly more intelligently written script where she could give insight, or at least fire back at Q during the courtroom and have like a bit more of a dominant personality there. Because she's basically just sitting there and then tends to Yar when she gets frozen. Like, she doesn't have any of her own counterpoint. She doesn't even bring up the fact that, hey, I'm half Betazoid. Why am I included in this? Are you going to accuse me of barbarism too? Like, can you give me an emotional reading on Q? No? Okay. Can you tell me if any of this is real? No, I can't tell you that either. Can you, use your emotional thing to insult Q and call him a man-child, which he so obviously is. Like, she doesn't get off any knowing what Marina Sirtis is like in real life as a bit of a firecracker and having a real fireback personality. None of that comes through, and you really should have played more into that strength than anything else. Sorry, I kind of hijacked your point there, Shai, because I agree.
I kind of want a courtroom scene recut where, instead of Yar or instead of Troy, Worf is there. And Q is like, how do you answer to the charge of being a dangerous, savage child? Right? Guilty. And for enslaving, guilty.
Guilty.
Hitting
the buzzer. Guilty.
I would love to see that dynamic, Q versus the Klingons. That would be fun to see. Or
He wouldn't even try. He wouldn't even try.
Yeah.
No, see, here's the thing about Klingons is they're very crafty, but I don't know if they have the intellectual depth that the whole humanity versus Q dynamic takes on later, and then through Voyager and et cetera, et cetera.
What? Give the Klingons another 3. Give the Klingons in the Discovery Season 4 era, where it's the 32nd century. Maybe then they progress to the point where they can go through a trial with the Q. Maybe that's why we haven't seen the Klingons in that century. They're too busy getting annoyed by Q, then they don't want to deal with it.
Be gone.
Be gone. Eat a good book lately. You go, Idle.
I think I'd change the whole bandy stuff. I think we pointed out that how did the bandy, essentially who are living in mud huts of the like, manage to capture a sentient being who can manifest energy at will and somehow keep it constrained to make them a lush starbase? That kind of always seemed a bit flimsy.
Yeah, no. That is weird, isn't it? Because you think about the geothermal energies. How do you harness it? You're living in mud huts.
Yeah. The power of the Groppler.
They're the evil Baku. They're evil Baku.
The proto-Baku.
They have the technological ability. They just choose to live in mud huts.
Some very destructible mud huts. It blew up
and they
quite
choose
nicely.
not to use shampoo and conditioner or cut their split ends.
Yeah, there's a range of hairstyles from Groppler Zorn to bandy shop salesman, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Some very
if I had to change...
You go on.
If I had to change one thing, I would probably change how Data is presented here. But it's kind of like a symptom of the entire season
creepy.
1 Data, where he's quite creepy. He is more like that. The Pinocchio comparison is apt, not just because he doesn't have the emotional depth, but also because he has that creepy puppet-like face every now and then, because Spiner hasn't quite settled into what he wants to do. He looks really intense and brooding and more like Lore in some respects. And again, having his input during the courtroom scene to do anything other than spite off legalese or try and appeal to the appeal of humanity of a learning race humanity is learning like I am type thing. That dynamic would have been interesting to explore. we know that there's mileage in the Q Data relationship because we see it in like season 3, and they bounce off each other relatively well there. But instead, it's all Picard. It's all Picard. No other character is given any room to do anything in that courtroom scene, really. Would have been a nice way to develop them, considering the fact that it's probably the strongest writing of the episode, really, in those scenes.
It's also the most not subtly racist writing of the whole show, too. So,
well,
if we're going to couch this or set it up with phase 2 or whatever and bring it in Roddenberry's ideas, it's like that's one of the things that, and it's not like the pilot is the only piece affected by that, because then we go into Luton and Code of Honor, and it's like
that's gonna be fun.
It took them a while to realize, maybe we shouldn't pull this shit in the future. Maybe we should just. Anyways, that's for another show.
That is.
If I could change one thing, this is more like an overarching season 1 and beyond thing, but Worf and Tasha are so redundant, and it's even more emphasized by the fact that they were always like standing next to each other in every situation.
Yeah.
So with all the, and I'm not saying get rid of.
Look, Worf is the diversity hire, okay? He just has to stand there and look good for the promotional pictures that the Federation sends out.
I'm not saying get rid of Deanna Troi or Marina Sirtis, but I feel like it would be interesting if Tasha became that, because she has so much trauma and messed up crap in her own background that moving her to sort of in that direction, where as she counsels others, she counsels herself, and grow into that could also be something that you could do, and then let Worf blossom into his own. So
yeah,
there's a lot of redundancy there, and I think it would be too much. I think a bridge too far to turn Worf into a counselor, or steer him even away from the leaping over the bridge.
Mental illness. Do not let it defeat you.
Jumping over the bridge and thrusting his phaser and everything. But they could have done maybe that with Yar instead.
Well, what they could have done was maybe what they were trying to do with Riker and Picard, where a delineation of duties, where one is in charge of the ship and one's in charge of away teams. Maybe have Yar be the shipboard weapons officer, and he's more of the away team specialist, so he's always in charge of that kind of thing. And then maybe have them butt heads like Reed and Hayes would in Enterprise, and have a conflict over authority, and then they can come together. It's you could have written a more interesting dynamic than, as you say, just kind of doing the same thing but from slightly different angles.
I think this comes from, they wanted to fill out the time with things like saucer separations and reaction shots, when they could have filled out the time with, a little bit more character development and things like that. A few little extra lines here and there, just to fill out, pad it out with something productive. I mean, not that we didn't like the gratuitous, TNG theme song playing whilst everything sort of broke apart, but yeah.
So actually, because we shouted out that scene with Crusher and Picard as being one of the better ones for her own development. It's like you could not only could you do those, but you could also do them while saving probably a whole lot of budget by not doing all the model shots and the effect shots and stuff. It's like put two good actors in a room together and let them fill 7 minutes, and it's like, there you go.
Script writers were very they had to be, people had to stick to the script, and if they deviated, no, there had to be a phone call up to sort of head office. People had to come down.
Right, but I'm saying, write that instead of writing the.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
But
that's one of the weird things about this, and it has two thematic links to the cage. First off, you have the scene on the bridge where they're staring at basically nothing happening while the theme plays to fill time, which is that's a funny little production thing. But also, oddly enough, they both have scenes where the captain has to talk about the first officer about an intensely personal death and its effect on their command style. And again, they're both one of the better scenes of that pilot, because you've got the one with Boyce and Pike versus Crusher and Picard. They're both very different, but again, that captain medical officer relationship is always, I feel, strong in a Star Trek series, and they kind of start that off right here, although it doesn't get as much play as I would have liked in TNG proper.
Parallel number 3, Marina Sirtis and Susan Oliver reaching the same heights of brilliance, I think.
You're not wrong.
I think Marina Sirtis would agree with you, yeah.
So, one thought I had in between viewing and recording this was, so just last week, then we did The Cage, and we're doing this. We'll probably do 1 or 2 more pilots, but to me, this felt a lot more 80s than The Cage did 60s. Like, of course, sets and stuff are dated, but they try to make you feel like, okay, now you're in the future, and this certain aspects of it didn't age quite as well, and it felt like, okay, this is a little bit 80s, a little bit early 90s type.
I don't know. I mean, I've always felt like the L-Car's design, like the Akuda's design work on TNG was kind of timeless, that it's aged
Yeah.
really well. Yeah, some of the, and especially the thing I noticed watching the remaster, every time I watch the remaster, I love how it lacks a sort of pinkish hue that all the original airings, everything looked kind of pink and shrimp bisque in the original airing, and they've removed that, which is so it looks even better than I remember. Like everything really pops. So I wouldn't say it looked as 80s as Cage.
Well, no, I'm not talking about the L-Cars. I'm just the whole feel, from some of the dialogue to some of the shots they do.
stylistically.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sure.
But
Like from a television production, I can see where his point. Yeah.
But I could be totally wrong about that, and that's where the crackling interplay comes in.
But like Shai was saying earlier, like there was nothing else kind of like this on telly at the time. This is why it was like a huge budget thing, why it was pushed forwards, because you didn't have a flagship science fiction show like this on television in like the mid to late 80s.
Are you casting aspersions on the original Battlestar Galactica?
Absolutely. Especially Battlestar
that was
1980.
That was like 6-7 years prior, as well as like Buck Rogers was also like almost 7 years before. So
I mean, there's a reason the 90s are regarded. Yeah, the reason the 90s are regarded as like a golden era for science fiction television is because Star Trek's Next Generation kicked it all back off again. You know, it gave the rise to people go look at things like, oh, we can do a Stargate series. Oh, we can do Cleopatra 2525. We can do Lex.
we can do Babylon 5. We can do Farscape.
Yeah. Exactly.
I love that you've listed Cleopatra 2525 as a sign of the golden age of science fiction television.
The things you remember in retrospect, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I watched a lot of Lex when I was younger too. Okay, Stars, you need to give us your applicable rating, please.
Okay, gentlemen, how many curiously hard gender binary color coded jellyfish aliens out of 10 would you give this episode?
Oh wow.
One's pink and one's blue. I guess which one's the male and the female?
All right, I'll dive in. I give this 4 jellyfishes out of 10. This is not really my cup of tea, and like I said, just the way it ages. If you look back on it, present day, it's like this. I wouldn't really necessarily want to show this Star Trek to my kids, or maybe not the next 1 or 2 episodes. But then after that, you know, then I'll be happy to dive in. But it's like this was not a great kickstart for things, and they did lay the foundation, but they're lucky it went the way it did instead of the way it could have gone.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with 5 curiously hard gender-coded jellyfishes out of 10 because, it's just a little bit too awkward. There's a little bit too... I feel like the script needed a few more revisions. They needed a bit more time, which, they were rushed. They it's not all their fault. But also knowing what we know about the production, it was also just a case of these are 60s television writers who are used to that style of thing in the 80s, now coming back and rehashing some of their greatest hits in some respect, and that has not aged as well as it could have. They needed to get some new blood, which they did around about season 3 with the addition of Michael Piller and stuff like that. But I feel like my sort of follow-on from that point is, while this may not be a great pilot, I think season 1 does have some great pilot episode material in it. I'm thinking specifically of the Binar episode. If you showed that as the beginning, as the pilot episode of TNG, that'd be a way better pilot. And I'm not sure if how long that ago was in terms of production, which one had been made first and how far away from each other. But like the Binar episode with like a genuinely alien presence, way more emphasis on the holodeck, which is way more 24th century and easier to sell as the future, using the starbase, the cool interplay between Picard and Riker. That's a way better introduction to the series, I feel like. And because when I was showing this to my friends like Katie and my boyfriend Barry, I was like, I don't know how easy is it going to be to start on Farpoint to sell them on Star Trek as a franchise. It's hard because you start here, then you go to the Naked Now, and then you go to Code of Honor. It's such a rough start to the series, and it's like, the trailer, as you say, good for selling to network executives. I don't know how, especially to a modern audience, this is a hard sell. You'd have to have a very open-minded audience to really sell them with this. Otherwise, you have to go to another episode and then come back to this and be like, "Listen, give it time."
Shy.
Oh, this is an 8.
Whoa.
Kids. Why? Because the year is 1987. And America has launched the last of its sci-fi franchises, and it worked. It worked. Everything's in here. You got a massive ship redesign. They didn't just depart from the Constitution class. They went all the way in another direction. They went organic and smooth and
this wide, like this thick,
oblong. Yeah, this wide, this thick. Exactly. Picard's an entirely different captain, but he is like, batting 1,000 right off the bat. Delancey is an improbable antagonist for this episode, but somehow it works. The rest of the cast is still finding their footing, but it frankly doesn't matter because this show is about Picard and the Enterprise and their adventures through space, and those two things come off fabulously. And it just happened that the rest of the cast ended up gelling beautifully. For the rest of the season, and it's an 8 because it worked. It worked. They had 7 seasons. The proof is in the pudding, as it were.
So there was a deleted scene where tentacles come out of the wall and grab Troy and Riker. I'm not making this up. So whatever our scores are, they would have been 3 points lower had that scene been included.
I think that's in the porn version, isn't it? The porn parody version that they
the Sixth Generation, yeah. You know what? I would have given it 3 points extra if that scene had been in there. If it had looked shitty enough, if it had looked really bad, and you could tell the Frakes was like manipulating it with his own hands, then I would have given it more points for looking worse.
And if he shouted, "Data, it's got me!"
Data, something's got me! Idle. How many curiously gender-coded jellyfish out of 10?
I think I'm going to go for a 6. I'm kind of going to half of I get the criticisms. I think this is definitely like Shah, you say, credit for it launching the franchise in the grand way that it did, but I think it failed upwards in that regard, that it kind of hit the ground running and then it couldn't stop. So I think what it tried to do with the Q stuff, with the grand morality play and the overall story that DC Fontana wrote with the alien creature were great. I think it failed on a lot of character interactions, with a lot of introductions and just general poor editing in terms of an episode as a whole. So I'll split it different and say probably a 6 for me. I enjoyed it, which is not something I can say for every episode. I didn't feel at any point in the episode that I was bored or that I thought this is particularly hokey, because there were some pretty hokey moments, but it was entertaining, so I'll go for a 6 on
Idle, you're biased because there was a ship porn moment.
There's lots of ship porn.
The D isn't my favourite ship, but it did look really good in this, on the remaster that we watched anyway, which is was fantastic.
They it was strong enough for me to set my VCR every week, and it was strong enough to carry me through Naked Now and Code of Honor. To keep watching it.
To be fair, any of us who didn't watch it live each episode, our votes don't actually count. So we average out to a 7 out of 10 on the score. So
oh boy.
6.5.
Yeah, no. Guess what? I was born just when this series was finishing. Think about that. Does that make you feel old? Yeah.
It does have the best
1994.
It does have the best series finale of any show ever.
Pretty much. I think it's hard to think of anyone that's ended better.
Yeah.
Okay.
From inauspicious beginnings.
So join us next week for our 4-part Code of Honor series as we cover one of the greatest episodes in Star Trek history.
Let's point out they call back to this episode in the finale, which is one of the you should all acknowledge is the greatest finale.
And not in a menagerie. It's not just watching on a view screen. you relive
Which
Encounter at Farpoint.
we did have a mini menagerie moment
we did, yeah.
when we're on the battle bridge and Riker's watching. How did they film that? Was there like an ensign with a handy cam following them around? Like how do you get those shots?
That's what Data was doing. That's all in Data's POV.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we won't be doing Code of Honor just yet. I think it will come fairly sooner if our subs have got anything to do with it. We're going to move on next time to The Emissary, the pilot of Deep Space Nine, as we continue.
Oh,
our
you mean the
coverage.
best pilot?
Ooh, that's interesting take. Ooh, we'll have to see.
Emissary's amazing.
Emissary
Sorry.
is great.
Emissary has a great first 10 minutes.
Strange New Worlds has the best pilot.
Hold your thought. Hold your phone. So we're going to do. I think general consensus is we're going to do all the pilots of the shows that are not airing currently. I think we'll save. So we'll go up to Enterprise and finish the pilots there before.
I was not included in this decision making at all. So.
And then
Yeah, I
we'll
think-
move on to the new Trek.
Well,
And you're like, yeah, I don't want to
thought
watch.
also
You're
you
like,
said-
Aldo's like, I want to watch Discovery.
I thought also you said we were not going to do currently running. Maybe that will change. We will have a discussion about this. On that note,
Don't let them see mom and dad fight on it. please.
exactly.
Oh no.
If you want to see our watch along, subscribe to our Twitch channel. You can subscribe there. You can also join in the discussion on our Discord for a special sub channel, which is where we'll be putting the votes after we finished all the pilots to decide what we're going to watch next. So keep an eye on that when
And
we're finished here.
All the money goes to charity, folks. So don't worry about
Absolutely,
that.
Yes, we have a policy
True.
to always put everything to charity, unless I get particularly broke, in which case it's mine.
Yeah, I'm an unemployed actor. What? I am the charity.
We're all, I think everyone's a bit of a charity these days.
And if you want to support an unemployed actor today, here's Shy. He lives sad, waiting for a casting call.
Yes, any
hungry.
any employment agency. Yeah.
He's gonna have like 4 blankets on his shoulders next time we record.
On that note,
He's going to be heating up a rock with a phaser to keep warm.
That's right. I need a heating rod.
Every week
How is
I'm
that never
slightly
a
more
product?
iced up. Right, on that
There's
note,
no outro.
we will see you next time. Ta-ra! Awesome.
I didn't even know the battery in this thing still works.
Wow.